Nuremberg trials are going to punish the top Nazi officials, and the rest of the individuals who perpetrated acts against the Jews and other individuals who worked at the concentration camps. They're going to be punished as well. And that still leaves a puzzling question. What do we do with the rest of the country, or people who were members of the Nazi Party? They are forced to undergo, as part of the plan from the Potsdam Conference and the Yalta Conference, the nation has to undergo what they call denazification. And basically, they want to rid the country of any symbols of Nazi Germany, and they want to deprogram the people from these beliefs. And so that, right, what you see here is a certificate guaranteeing that this person has basically been cleared by the government to get back into society, to become a regular member of society again, that they are no longer somebody who is a member of the Nazi Party and they don't believe in those ideals anymore. So you had to get clarification or verification that you've been, quote unquote, denazified. That also means getting rid of different things from the country itself. What you see right here is an eagle that had been a symbol above an archway, and there was a swastika on there, but they take it off. So any images of the swastika and other Nazi propaganda are removed from German society. They also take people around to concentration camps and show them specifically what had been done by their government. They show them so that they can't claim that they didn't know about it. They can't claim that they were just bystanders, that that they didn't really have an idea, and they're like, well, now you know for sure. And they want to let them know that, listen, we're not trying to punish you as a people, but there's something that has to change here. And what your government did was wrong, and you have to accept some responsibility for that. So you see American military officials right here. There is a giant pile of corpses, and people are forced to come around and see this. In this particular instance, there was an open field of corpses, and they force, you see the soldiers in the background, and this woman is ultimately struggling, we would hope struggling with what she's seeing here. So the people are going to be denazified. And that incorporates posters and flyers like this with photos saying, look what's been done. Look what the government did. We're responsible. It's absolutely terrible to see some of these things, but the United States government and the governments of the other major nations, the Allies, they're like, this is something we have to do. We have to show people what happened, and we have to convince them that what the Nazis were doing was wrong. We also have to determine what we're going to do with the Japanese, okay? The Japanese, one of the things that we do is we're going to have to establish a new government, and that means getting rid of the old one. Hideki Tojo, the prime minister for a bulk of World War II, Hideki Tojo tried to kill himself, but he tried to use the traditional seppuku like the samurai used to do. Unfortunately for him, it didn't go well, and the Allies were able to capture him before he finished the job. They nurse him back to health, put him on trial, and Hideki Tojo is then going to be hung. So they resurrect him only to kill him again later. Now, Tojo was one of the individuals. Remember, he's the prime minister of the government. He's responsible for quite a bit. He'd also been a military general who knew the atrocities that the Japanese were doing. And they're like, this government can no longer stand. Ironically, though, Emperor Hirohito, who you see here on the right, is left alone. Even though they didn't like Hirohito, the Allies understood that the Japanese people believe that he is half man, half God, and if he says to do something, then they're going to do it. So they keep him in place as emperor, as a figurehead, but they're going to write a completely new constitution for their government. And this new constitution will not allow Japan to have a military, and only now, over 70 years later, has the United States started to allow Japan to create a self-defense force which protects them. And since then, the United States has had military bases in Japan, and we have kind of acted as their protector. So this new constitution doesn't allow Japan a military. They essentially are going to have to create a new government where the emperor has an even more reduced role, and they're going to have a democratic form of society. And since then, Japan's actually kind of resurrected itself. They have created a very interesting atmosphere and life for themselves. And they have been very economically successful since the end of the war. Now, the people who were a lot of the hardcore criminals, this was a real problem what to do with those Japanese. Um, in particular, they said, what do we do with members of the Japanese army who have committed some of these terrible atrocities that have been perpetrated a lot of times against the Chinese and against American POWs? Ultimately, a lot of these people are going to serve time in prison, but they are not a lot of them are going to be executed. They only get rid of or execute the people who were some of the worst offenders. Many of the people are imprisoned and later let back out into society because there were so many of them. They simply couldn't execute all of them. It would have been detrimental to the society as a whole. So the Japanese are going to recover, but it does take them a while. When the war ends, there is a terrible amount of devastation in the terms of loss of human life. You see that what's interesting, if you look at the little pie graph on the bottom right, a lot of the people who are going to die are people who are civilians, meaning non-military personnel. It's crazy to think about, but that many people are going to die as a result. Now, this graph shows you a couple of other things, the little bar graphs. You see the Soviet Union close to 24 million deaths as a result of World War II. People forget, too, that the Chinese are going to lose a substantial number of people because of what the Japanese had done. But you see that the devastation we're talking about in the millions. They estimate total that somewhere in the neighborhood, and they can't be 100% certain about this, but they estimate somewhere between 60 to 65 million people die as a result of World War II. That is a staggering loss of human life in a short amount of time. Now, the little blue lines here show you that the deaths as a percentage of the 1939 population. So pre-war population, take a look at, for example, Poland. Poland lost over 18% of their population. Soviet Union, about 13% of its population. It's scary to think about that many people disappearing. To put that in context for today, America has approximately 330 million people. 10% of that would be 33 million. So you could almost double that, and somewhere about 55 to 60 million. That would be kind of the loss that Poland would have, in losing about 18 to 20% of the population. When the war is over, we celebrate, the whole world is kind of celebrating, but there's going to be another tense problem here. We're going to have another little dispute that won't erupt into another world war, but it will cause a lot of tension in the post-war world.